Welcome to the Brand Lincoln Podcast, the show where we dig into the stories behind Lincoln's most inspiring business owners and influential people. It's where big ideas and even bigger personalities collide. Proudly sponsored by Perch Merch, your one-stop shop for screen printing, embroidery, and promotional products that make your brand unforgettable. Call us at 402-217-5212 or visit us at perch-merch.com to give your business the glow-up it deserves. And don't just listen, be a true multitasker. Like, follow, and subscribe on whatever platform you're tuning in on. And check us out on TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube at Brand Lincoln Podcast. We're basically everywhere you waste your time. Let's get inspired, Lincoln. The stories start now. Hey, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Brand Lincoln. I'm your host, Chris Beecham, joined by my co-host, Joe Cruz and Henry Schmidt. Hi,
Hello,
Chris.
Chris.
I just like to confuse you guys. Okay, so today in the Perch Merch studio, we have Rachel Barth, who is the Director of Strategic Marketing for the Lincoln Airport.
Hello.
Okay, let's talk about this.
Awesome.
Okay.
Let's do it. What do you want to know?
What does that mean? What do you do?
That's a great question.
It's a lot of words.
It is a lot of fancy words.
There was actually more. I think we...
I've had, like 2 or 3 titles. So I officially just hit 5 years at the airport, which I joked with my boss, I deserve like a gold star and cookies because it's been a rough 5 years, but made it, hit 5 years 2 days ago, actually. So,
Nice.
yeah, thank you. It's the longest time I've ever been at a job. So I was like, yes, I made it. So actually, I was hired 5 years ago, May 2020, middle of a pandemic.
Perfect timing.
Perfect timing to get into aviation, kind of what the was I thinking kind of moment when I walked into the terminal. 4 people boarded an aircraft that day, and that is it. So middle of the pandemic, got hired into aviation. At the time, it was communication and customer engagement was kind of my role.
So you had 4 people to engage with
That
day?
is it. Yep. Said hi, thanks for flying. Actually, you couldn't because you couldn't like talk to anybody. You had masks on and, you had to be socially distanced. And it was literally like, that was my first project, was putting like those huge like circle signs on the floor of where to stand because everybody had to be like, 6 feet apart. And we were putting up plexiglass and I was ordering masks and we were trying to find like the proper ones. And, and then Lincoln had different rules than everybody else. And so we had to like work with the, the state and the local government on all of those different rules. And so, yeah, it was an interesting time. But since then, luckily, we've gotten out of that. Last year, about February, I was also added air service. So now air service development. So my roles changed a little bit. Now it's more just straight up marketing, working on really just kind of giving the airport a personality is what I like to say, but do a ton of community engagement. We do everything from the free outdoor movies for the public, which is really fun. That's something we actually started during the pandemic as just a way to get people out to the airport, even if they weren't flying.
Sorry, I've never heard of the free outdoor movies with.
What?
Yeah.
Do you know about this, Chris?
Yeah, I knew about it.
I didn't know about this.
Yeah. Well,
If you followed the Lincoln
Yeah.
Airport on any social media.
or have kids. So
There's my excuse.
yeah,
Got
there
out
you
of
go.
that one.
There you go. So during the pandemic, my boss, Dave Herring, kind of challenged me and was like, hey, like we still want people to engage with us. We still want people to, know that we're part of the community, even if they're not flying right now, or if they just don't fly out of the airport, we still, have a presence here and we bring so much more to the community than just aviation and just flying. So we came up with the idea to do an outdoor movie. And that was really popular right during the pandemic. Like lots of small towns were doing it. So I was like, let's do this. So I literally drove around our industrial park and we have these old hangars out there that they used during the Air Force days because the airport used to be Air Force Base, right? Back in the 60s. So these huge, huge, huge hangars. And I drove past and I was like, hey, it's white, it's giant. I think we could just like project a movie up there, and worked with our government here because even in the city, people still couldn't like really get together during the pandemic. Like there was rules on how many. And so I remember having to space cars like 6 feet apart and it was this whole thing, but we got through that. And so now we do a free movie once a month, usually starting in like April and May through the end of November. And it's blown up. I mean, we're now averaging anywhere from 1,000 to 1,500 people in the movie.
Holy smokes.
Yeah, it's just really grown, and we've partnered with everybody from like the Lincoln Chamber, who's helped us, push those out in their newsletters. We were named, I think, top 10 free things to do in Lincoln, but it's gotten really popular, and so now local businesses will sponsor. So we just had a movie last week. We did the movie Coco, which aligned well, Cinco de Mayo that week, but the YMCA was a sponsor, which was super cool. So they brought out like little soccer goals and a bunch of little things for kids to do. The month before that, we did an Easter egg hunt. So we always try to like do something fun for the kids, but we invite local food trucks to come out for free. So I don't charge them. They come out and they sell food to the community, again, free for everybody to come. And then we'll just show a movie once it gets dark out. And it's just become this really cool event where I always joke, it's like the ultimate community event, right? Because you can't do a lot for free. Trust me, I have kids, so I know how expensive it is to take your kids to the movies or really to do anything. So this was a way for the airport to kind of give back to the community in a really simple way. And again, it's getting people to come out to the airport, whether they're flying or not. And I always joke with people, like, how does this relate to like aviation? I'm like, well, think about it. If I can start connecting with kids at ages 4, 5, 6, 7, and they remember coming out to the airport and watching a movie with their grandparents, or coming out with their football team and doing a team building, or this was like their family event is once a month they went to the airport. What are they going to do when they're 20, 21, 22, 23 and they start maybe traveling for business, or they have their own families and start traveling? They're going to remember how awesome the airport was when they were little, because people like have great memories of things that happened when they were younger. And that's the thing, is if I can start, capturing those audiences now as they grow up, they're going to have a positive image of the Lincoln Airport. And so it's really, strategic, because it helps us engage with families, engage with businesses, because then businesses can sponsor and they have free access to 1,000 people.
That's awesome.
Yeah, there you go, Joe.
Well, I'm glad I asked.
Yes. So those are really popular. So we host events all the time at the airport. Even this week, we're doing a global entry event. Yeah. Yay. I have
an appointment.
Good. Yeah. Those are, they're hard to come by. There's people coming from 5-6 hours away for the event. So
Well, yeah, I went to like schedule the appointment, and I wanted like Wednesday or what? No times.
Right.
Thursday, one time. Friday, like I was like, oh,
yeah.
okay.
This is like the fast lane for coming back into the country.
Correct. Yeah. So if you're
Which after my last, experience.
Yeah, if you travel internationally, like, you want to have this. So we've never hosted one, so we decided to host one. We've done a couple pre-check events, but really, like, my goal is to market the Lincoln Airport and give it a personality. And since then, it has evolved into community events, outreach, everything from social media, websites, partnerships. We're the official airport of the Huskers, which has been a great partnership for us. Just partnering with them and be able to put our logo next to the N. All the teams fly out of our airport, which has been great, being able to capture that and promote that. And then now it's air service development. So really, not only how do we keep United Airlines here and keep them happy, but how do we also attract another airline to come into our community? So my friend over here who has to complain about going to Omaha doesn't have to do that anymore.
Let's talk about this.
Sure.
Because we were kind of talking before, but I think everybody in this town is behind you on this.
I hope so. I don't know about those keyboard warriors, but some are. Yeah.
Yeah, maybe if you
People on Facebook
Right
will
next
always
to the
complain
airport.
about everything.
Oh my god.
That's true. They will find something. But how do we do this? How do you do that?
Yeah, no, it's a really good question.
Especially when you have Omaha, which still an hour away, but it's you got to pay for parking and everything like that. But then they're even expanding,
Yeah.
and you're like,
Yeah.
hey, stop it. Like, I remember, what are we talking, like 20 years ago when we're talking about combining the two and putting it between Lincoln and Omaha.
Yeah.
And then Omaha's like, yeah,
Yeah, we're good.
we're going to do this. And then they
Yeah.
just went nuts.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's a lot to unpack. And I don't know how long this podcast is, but air service development is incredibly complex. And I am not any sort of an expert, literally just stepped into this role about a year ago, but I've learned a lot. And one of the things I've learned when you talked about the whole combining Omaha and Lincoln, right? Like, I didn't know that was a thing until I started at the airport, and then you hear people saying, oh, we should have done this. So one of the big reasons they didn't is because I don't think people quite understand how expensive it is to build a new airport. Like, I mean, you're talking billions and billions and billions of dollars in infrastructure. So one, that's a big issue. Two, the economic impact that you get from having an airport in your community is huge. So why would Omaha or Lincoln want to take that economic impact and forfeit that? And it's actually really good timing because we're doing an economic impact study right now. We have the University of Nebraska doing it for us, but in 2021, we did one through the Department of Transportation in just our airport. And again, you're talking about a year of pandemic during that time. I think our impact here in Lincoln was like 1.3 billion. So why would we as a community want to give that up and just pass it off to, Ashland or Omaha? You don't want to. And I mean, that's a lot of jobs. That's a lot of people flying in and out of our community. I think it was like over 40 million just in tourism. So people coming in, right? Heads in beds, using gas, filling up at the gas stations, going shopping. I mean, that's because you have an airport here that can get people into your community. So you don't want to give that up. But as far as air service goes, when I was hired, right, pandemic time, Delta had made the decision to stop flying due to the pandemic. At that time, their regional carrier that they were hiring to fly in and out of Lincoln was SkyWest Airlines. And SkyWest, great regional carrier, one of the biggest in the entire entire U.S. really, they were really struggling with pilots. And so that was one of the issues is we all knew that there was a pilot shortage. Well, at the time, some of the airports they were flying in and out of, maybe smaller airports, think about like your Kearney, Nebraska, Scottsbluff, those are considered essential air service airports. So they receive federal funding to fly. The government said, nope, you still have to stay in these communities because we're giving you money to fly. So even though it's not the highest priority? Correct. So the government said, you have to continue flying these routes because you're in a contract with us. We give you money to fly out of Scottsbluff, Kearney, Grand Island, whatever. So there were communities like them who do really rely on that service. They did not lose that service because they are government funded, where we did because we're not. So does that help kind of make sense? So Delta had to reallocate resources. That caused us to lose our Minneapolis flight, which was a really popular flight in and out of Lincoln. I think we had 3 flights a day when I was hired. They left for about 6 months. We actually convinced SkyWest to come back. And then they came back. And even when they were flying and came back, I mean, we were filling 85% of the seats. So, I mean, it was a great route. We know a lot of people love that Minneapolis route, especially if you're a Delta loyalist, which a lot of people in the Lincoln community are. Again, they struggled again with the pilot issues and trying to figure out how they navigate the shortage of aircraft and pilots. So we lost that service, which was really, really tough. And what's happened over the last few years is airports our size, I kind of joke we're like the redheaded stepchild, right? So you have Omaha up the road who can pull in roughly about 1 million people. So between who lives in Omaha and then those surrounding communities, and you can even consider Iowa, right? Because Iowa will pull people into Omaha to fly out. They're what they call as an encapsulation area is about 1 million. Ours is 400,000, maybe 500,000, depending on, who you talk to and what kind of service you're attracting. And then you have your Grand Island and your Kearney, which are kind of our next probably closest airports. Now, again, those are all essential air service. They are funded by the federal government. So we don't lose a lot of passengers to them, but they do have some great service. Grand Island has American to Dallas, and then they also have Allegiant service. And so that is technically competition because those are services that we can't get because they're in Grand Island. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's not fair.
Correct.
I'm just saying.
Yeah.
Why can't we get that?
Yeah. So,
we're too big?
So yes. So there's all these rules around essential air service. There's a mile radius that you have to be from like the next largest airport. I think Grand Island and Kearney both just fit right outside of that from Omaha. So they are considered essential air service. So both Kearney and Grand Island both receive a substantial amount of money from the federal government. I don't quote me on which one's which, but one is like $7 million a year and one's $5 million a year to fly those routes. So honestly, those routes could be empty, and no matter what, they're going to get federal funding for that, where we don't get that type of funding. So it's not going to make sense for, American Airlines to want to leave Grand Island and come here when they're
zero risk.
They're making money there, right? At zero risk. Honestly, I'm not sure they care if they're full or not because they get the money regardless. So that's always been a struggle when people are like, hey, why don't you go after American Airlines? It's like, what's in it for them, right? Like, how do we set ourselves apart when you are getting federally subsidized at a local airport not too far from us, and you're up the road in Omaha capturing 1 million passengers? So that's the struggle, is what kind of airline would fit in Lincoln that's not maybe at a nearby airport, or they're not going to compete with themselves. And so that's something that, since I was brought on, last year into air service development, we've been really trying to put a deep dive into like, what does Lincoln deserve? So everybody thinks we need every single airline here, and that is not going to happen. We're not big enough. And you don't want to like put somebody else out of business,
We're not Denver.
right? Correct. And so people are like, why don't you get Delta and American and Southwest and this and this and this? I'm like, because they wouldn't survive here. Like, we do not have the type of population to be able to have all those different types of airlines. And people are like, yeah, but back in my day, we had 13 airlines in Lincoln. Correct. We did. But look what's happened over the years, right? They bought each other out. People have gone out of business. It used to be, America West. It changed to like Pan America, and they've all just kind of, bought each other out. And you really have your bigs, right? You have your Delta, your United, your American. Southwest is kind of in that mix, but I would argue that they've really dropped off recently, considering a lot of their cuts and what they've been going through. You kind of got your middle of your roads, like your JetBlues, maybe like a Sun Country, Spirit Airlines. And then you have what you call your ultra low cost carriers. And that's your
like you get
That's
charged
not
if you bring
Spirit?
a water bottle
yeah,
on.
you get Frontier, Allegiant.
I put Spirit right in there.
Those are your ultra low
Charge
cost
you like
carriers.
$14 to bring one little
Yeah.
bag on.
Yes. So those are kind of like, if you divvy out your airlines, that's kind of it. It's not a lot. I mean, it's
That's
not.
10.
Yeah. And some of those are regional, right? You have like a SkyWest, which is regional. You've heard of maybe Mesa or GoJet. Those are all regional carriers. They really survive because the bigs will hire them to fly on behalf of them in certain parts of the country. So you start looking at that, and it's the smaller airports like Lincoln, which were considered a non-hub, has really seen air service dissipate over the last couple of years. And unfortunately, you are competing with small airports that are getting federally subsidized, and then you're competing with the bigger airports who just keep getting bigger. And so how do you combat that? And so that's really what we've been trying to focus on, is how do we go and talk to an airline and convince them, hey, I think you can be profitable in Lincoln. I think you could come here and own the market. And that's what I've been honestly working on the last 15 months now, is trying to figure that out. I joke that I'm like, I might as well be hired by like the Chamber of Lincoln or Visit Lincoln, because really that's what I do. When I go to air service conferences, I am trying to convince these airlines in 20-minute little increments, that's all you get with them, why Lincoln? Why should they come here? And they know the data. Like, these guys are, I shouldn't say guys, because there's some girls, not very many, but they are so analytical. They have so much data. They can sit there and they can look up anything they want to about our community. But what is the stuff they can't look up, right? Like, what makes Lincoln special? What do we have going on here that they don't know about? And that's the stuff that, like, I joke is like the secret sauce. That's what I get to share with them when I go to these air service conferences, to try to convince them to come to Lincoln. And it's tough. I mean, we're in a tough spot. I can't magically move Lincoln further away from Omaha. But some advantages is that you mentioned Omaha's going through this big, $1 billion terminal. That's actually going to help us. And in some cases, because a lot of those air carriers, they don't want to pay that added cost. Somebody has to pay for that. And if it's not, I know they got some grant funding. I don't know exactly how their funding works, but somebody has to pay for that. Usually those costs do get passed off to your concessionaires, your airlines, which then either they're going to raise your ticket prices, or
The consumer's going to lose.
correct. And those airlines who are super cost sensitive, they don't want to pay that. They don't want higher costs. So you could see some of them getting squeezed out because of cost, and then that's an opportunity for us. And so that's really what we're trying to capitalize on right now. We have an air service consultant I work with every day, and he said, ideally, based on our market size, we could sustain 2 legacy carriers, which, we had United and Delta, both did great here. And then we probably do deserve and need an ultra low cost carrier. And the good thing about those ultra low cost carriers, and what we learned through even having Redway here for this short amount of time, it brought in so many families, so many young professionals. We don't get a lot of those families of 4, right? And we always joke it's like the 2.5 kids that go to Orlando or, go on spring break. We don't get a lot of that. We're mostly business traffic, and a lot of international traffic actually comes through Lincoln. So if Redway did show us anything, is that there's a huge market in Lincoln for families and for young professionals and college students that want to fly out of our local airport. We just don't maybe have that cost where, kind of their cost break is, and we don't have those flights. And so that is another focus of ours, is how do we convince a carrier that maybe has some more of those family friendly flights to come into Lincoln, because we know that there's a market here for it.
Okay, this is all fascinating. Okay.
I told you I can talk a long time about
I
this.
didn't think I was going to be intrigued so much. But you're right. Okay, so we had Redway, and it kind of proved that we can do it.
Yep.
Yeah, people were very excited for that.
Yeah, and they had a one-way or straight trip to Vegas, so that's really all.
And to Disney World.
Yeah.
I was ready to go.
Yeah.
And that failed not because of the seats, but because of their management, correct?
Yes. So 100% too big, too fast, right? Way too many markets.
Because it was 8, 10, 12 flights?
So it was 7 markets, but twice a week. So, you were looking at 14 flights a week. It definitely needed to be more of a slow roll. Like, here's 1 or 2,
start with
see
a few.
how it goes. And then, but there was some issues with the, who they got the aircraft from, with how many hours it had to fly. And the aircraft was huge. It was well over 160 seats. And so that's a lot of seats to fill. You're talking about a football team right there, trying to fill that twice a day out of Lincoln.
What's a normal plane through, United that we have?
Sure. So most of what you'll see out of Lincoln is about 75 seats.
So twice as big.
Yep. We do have some 50-seat RJs. People hate them. I have a husband who's 6'4". He complains about it all the time. But we did find out last week from United, they actually flew into Lincoln and came to a summit that I hosted for air service, that they are starting to phase those out, and we're on the short list to get the upgauged aircraft. So huge win for us. 75 seats is like perfect, because you can get first class. They're a little bit wider, a lot more overhead room for your bags. That's the sweet spot for Lincoln, is probably 75 seats to maybe 120.
Okay, so but the red airline was 140, you said? 150?
Oh gosh, no, it was like 160.
Jeez.
Yeah, it was a huge aircraft. They fly. It was a global crossing aircraft. You might have seen them on the news. I think they're doing some of the deportation planes right now, and things like that. But they're a big charter aircraft, so probably too big for our market, considering how many flights there was.
Bigger
And
than the
also,
airport is.
yeah, well, and also, I think it proves that it's expensive. Like, it is expensive to have an airline. And so you really are also trying to look at somebody who maybe is established and comes with some capital. $3 million, which is, what it took to kind of start that was it. They didn't have any back funding. They weren't getting, a bunch of government funding like I mentioned some of the other airports get. You really needed to have some of that additional funding to help you, because it's expensive for pilots and your flight attendants. You're putting them up in hotels. You're paying for gas. You're paying for food. Like, when you start going through all that, it gets expensive very, very quickly. So that was part of the reason. But what it did show, and what we are learning from just even talking to airlines, because I asked them, like, jokingly, but not jokingly, hey, are you going to hold this against us? And they're like, we are super fascinated in the data. Like, you sold over 17,000 tickets in 90 days. Like, that is
that's like the best case study right there.
Correct. Yeah. Yes. And would I have loved for it to last longer so we could keep studying what worked and not work? Of course. Of course I wanted this to work. It was like my baby. But what it did show is Lincoln is hungry for air service. And so that is the story I tell. Like, I try to not look at Redway as this like epic failure. I'm trying to look at it as like, hey, yes, they were only here for a few short months, but look what we were able to accomplish. Like, look at Lincoln. Yeah. And the airlines we are talking to, they love that data. And they're like, it shows, hey, what works well? What out of those 7 markets plus the 2 we were about to announce, what sold quickly? It was your Vegas. It was your Orlando. It was like your Phoenix. And then when we have our air service consultant come in and they show the top 10 markets out of Lincoln, those 3 are in our top 10. So it's like, it showed exactly where people from Lincoln want to travel.
Well, yeah, because like when I go to Vegas and I go to Omaha, there's always people I know from Lincoln on the plane.
100%. Yeah.
It's like every single time. I'm like,
Yep.
why does every single time I know somebody?
Yeah.
You know?
Exactly. And so it's there. We know it's there. I feel like we're on that cusp. But I think what's hard in Lincoln, and I can attest to this because I grew up in a blue collar family. I'm a farm kid. It's expensive to fly, like no doubt. And so getting, I think, what I called a ULCC, an ultra low cost carrier in here as an option, I think will be big for Lincoln. I think it'll give more families the ability to fly and take their kids on vacation. I think it'll give young professionals an opportunity to, do those kind of extended weekend trips, I joke, the Allegiant model, right? You leave on a Thursday, you come back on a Sunday. Like that's the perfect kind of family trip or extended weekend. And that's really what I'm focused in on right now, plus getting another legacy carrier in here. And the legacy carrier, although scary because it will eat away at some of United's, load factors, which we have some of the best load factors in the entire country. I'm always comparing our data to everybody else's, and we're rocking high 90s some months, even mid 90s. Honestly, I don't think I've seen anything below that since I've been hired. And United loves us. I mean, really, they do. We're their bread and butter. Last week when they flew into Lincoln, they announced they're giving us a 5th Chicago flight this fall. They added a 5th Denver flight this month. So by the end of this year, we'll be at 10 flights just with United. So do they want another legacy to come in? Absolutely not. But what it'll do is it will help us make sure that they keep their fares lower.
So when you say in the mid 90s, is that a percentage of tickets sold? Okay.
Yep. So if you have 75 seats on your aircraft, if
you're selling 70 of them.
Yeah.
That's really good.
Yeah. You want to keep your what we call load factor. So how many butts and seats are there compared to how many seats? We want those to be high 90s, mid 90s. And actually we've crept up a little too high where what's happening is then that leakage does go to Omaha because we don't have enough capacity. And so that's honestly what I've been harping on United for is we need more capacity in Lincoln. We need larger aircraft and we need more, so larger aircraft and then just more flights. And the United senior route planner said in my summit last week, Rachel is politely aggressive. And I laughed and I was like, thank you. I'll take that as a compliment. And I was like laughing because I was telling my boss, I'm like, did you hear that? I'm politely aggressive. But he goes, she has been pushing us to get you larger aircraft and more flights. And that's what we're doing. So, I mean, it's working, right? Like we're the one airline we have, which everybody complains about. You only have one. But if you're going to have one, have the best one in the world. And we do. United Airlines anybody can fight me on this. They are the best. I mean, any number you look at anything, they are the best. They get you to the most places. They have some of the best on-time performance. They pay their people well. And when everybody else was ditching out on us during the pandemic, they stuck with us. And I know Nebraskans are big on loyalty. I'm big on loyalty. And I thanked United actually when they were here last week. I'm like, thank you. When everybody else was bailing on us and pulling flights and not sure if they were going to come back into our community, United stuck with us. And there's something to say about that. I know everybody has snafus with different airlines, but they were one of the only ones that posted positive earnings in Q1 of this last year or this year. And they're looking at continuing to post positive numbers. Like you want to be with an airline that's making money because then when stuff gets tough, right, they look at markets to cut. We're not going to be one of those markets.
That's good.
Yeah.
Huh. So, and then we also have the big remodel that we did, which it looks fantastic. I don't know.
Thank you.
Henry, you probably haven't been there.
I saw it. You and I went there.
We walked through the
open house deal.
The open house thing. But it looks totally different.
Yeah, it's gorgeous.
From the one that looked exactly the same for the last 40.
Yeah, it looks modern.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, there's even
I did a podcast with somebody. I think I did an interview with Robin Eschliman, and she's like, she always calls it your grandma's airport. So she's like, not your grandma's airport. I'm like, correct.
Yeah, 100%. Because that's kind of, even when you were going there before, I mean, yeah, you were happy to be there, but it wasn't like
it was pretty dingy. It was not a good reflection of our community.
Mm-hmm. It was not exciting.
Correct.
I would say.
Well, I was glad to see that they got the biplane hanging back up.
Yes, the red airplane. Mm-hmm. Yeah, people love that. It's like a sport airplane. But that was actually built like in Nebraska. So that's super cool. We used to be a huge like aviation manufacturer. We had an airplane manufacturing plant in Lincoln. and tons of airplane schools, aviation schools around here. At one point, Lincoln actually had 5 airports. So there's a ton, there's a ton of aviation history right here in our community. So the fact that we were able to get one of those aircraft and put it in the terminal, plus it's red, so it plays on perfectly with being a partner with Husker Athletics.
So what are some other interesting things?
Yeah, that was really good. You should have led with that.
Oh, sorry.
That you've learned about the airport that people in Lincoln just don't know.
So they don't know.
The history.
Yeah. So I think, to go back to the terminal, we did just do, a fairly decent sized terminal renovation. It was virtually untouched. And I think that one was built in the 1970s. And it had this like split checkpoint. And people kind of remember, Delta was on one side, United was on the other. We had 2 TSA checkpoints. It was kind of confusing to maneuver. And what was happening is people were like getting confused which line they were supposed to go in, and they were going through the wrong TSA line and then realizing they were at the wrong airline and just causing a bunch of problems. So I am really glad that we decided to move forward with the terminal modernization project, because really, if you think about it, when you land in a new community or even drive into a new community, that is your first impression of that town, right? And like, I am super proud of Lincoln and everything that we've done to kind of get ourselves there. I'm excited for the convention center. The new baseball complex out here is amazing. Pinnacle Bank Arena, everything that we've done in downtown with some of the revitalization. You want people to land in your community and be like, wow, like that is their first impression of our town. And 3 of my speakers last week at the summit I hosted have never actually been in Lincoln, or they've just driven. And so they've never even been in our airport, including the 2 gentlemen from United. And they flew in and they were like, just right away stepping off that plane, I was like, this is nice. Not like overly nice, like flashy nice, but just like, this is nice. Like, they're like, you have the cleanest bathrooms I've ever seen in an airport. One of them joked. That's a good
compliment.
That is such a compliment. It is the number one complaint out of U.S. passengers is dirty bathrooms. So we made it like a top priority to make sure that, we're clean and simple, easy to navigate. You still have that Nebraska kind of nice feel. We have our customer service agents that are welcoming you. They'll help you push a wheelchair, get your luggage, help order you an Uber. I mean, that is like that Nebraska nice feel that we wanted, not just by our team, but everybody. And so even one of the big things we did is we brought our janitorial in-house. So we don't use a third-party cleaning company. Those are our employees. And so we can control how clean our airport is because they're actually our employees and they have some pride in what they're doing versus just coming and working, whatever shift they have to work and then they leave. So yeah, very excited about the terminal. You mentioned, or what are some other cool things about the airport? So when I was hired, one of the cool things that I learned, and a lot of people do know this if they're from the community, but we have one of the longest runways in the entire country. So our primary runway, we have 3 runways. Our primary is 12,901 feet long. The space shuttle can land here, which is a pretty cool fun fact. I think there's maybe 6 or 7 airports, and we're one of the longest in the country because we used to be an Air Force base, right? And so it's taken a lot for us to maintain that runway, but it's also really helped out. That's why we can keep the air refueling wing here with the National Guard. We are back up to Offutt Air Force Base. Any large military aircraft in the entire country can land in Lincoln. And so it's really become an important asset for us to keep that, because what you're seeing is a lot of airports can't find the funding, or maybe they don't have the
2 miles of space.
Yeah, they don't have the business to keep that kind of asset. And so they're letting them go. And so it's been a really big priority of ours, working with the National Guard and working with, honestly, some of the political people around Nebraska to keep that here. And so we are. And so that's kind of the next big project in Lincoln is we're doing a complete rehab of that runway. And that will start this November, but that's about $100 million project. So very, very, very significant project. But it'll take about 2 years to complete. But it'll guarantee that we keep that business. And so it's really setting us up for long-term success. And so what we're learning, right, is aircraft are getting bigger, even military aircraft are getting bigger. And we love our military. Like, we have a great relationship with our Air and Army National Guard back up to Offutt Air Force Base. And so we want them to have a huge runway to land on. And so we've really made sure that that's been a top priority of ours.
What do you do in the meantime while it's getting done or redone, though?
It's a good question. So it'll be kind of a phased approach, but we have 2 other runways that almost any aircraft can land on. So our
But they're not 12,000.
They're not 12,901 feet by 200 feet.
So
wide.
hopefully the space shuttle does not need to land here during that.
Yeah. It's, honestly, like probably the biggest issue is what they call the ILS will be down, which is some instrument ratings. That's how the pilots can land in like inclement weather. That could be the issue because we tend to have fog and snow and things like this here. That'll be the biggest problem is that system actually will get taken down during the runway project. And so on those inclement weather days, they may have to divert somewhere else. And there's really nothing we can do about it. That's just part of the project. But we're going to try to do a phased approach. So hopefully it won't impact too much of our commercial flying.
Got it. Okay. So what is the plan then beyond that then, do you think, for like, what's your vision?
Sure.
Of, let's say 5 years from now?
Yeah.
What's your vision?
Yeah. So I'm glad you asked because we actually just did a strategic plan and kind of talked about that. Like, right, you just get in a room and say, where does Lincoln go from here? How do we continue to thrive? And honestly, like one of the big things that I love talking about is just how diverse we actually are at the airport, right? We have our general aviation. So think about your Duncan Aviation, your Atlantics, your Silverhawks, all of those businesses on the east side of the airport. That is our general aviation. It is thriving. I feel like Duncan's going to take over the world because every time we have a building that comes up for lease, right? They're always one of the first ones because they're just building like crazy. They've really done a great job of building a base here in Lincoln, but they employ like 1,300 people. It's impressive, and they're only growing and getting stronger. I think they're the largest single or privately owned FBO in the entire country. So super proud to have Duncan here. But that whole east side, I mean, if you drive to the airport, we're out of space. Like there's not much more space for additional hangar development, additional buildings over there. So we have to figure out how to potentially grow on the west side of the airport. Well, fun fact, we oversee 5,000 acres at the Lincoln Airport. We're one of the biggest airports in the entire country. And so we really need to figure out how to, I know. Fun fact, right? People are like, oh, Lincoln, you're so small. I'm like, correction, we're not. Yeah, we oversee 5,000 acres. Yeah, it's huge.
Politely aggressive.
Yeah.
I am politely aggressive. I am going to use that forever. I'm going to put that on my resume. Like, you're really nice, but you're also kind of aggressive. Fun fact, I was the first girl born in my family in 78 years. So I think that's why I kind of get that. Yeah, I kind of get that politely aggressive. I grew up in a family full of boys, and so
That's
I played
multiple generations with no girl.
Literally, my head's going.
Yeah.
Okay.
True story.
Got it.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, like farm kid. I literally was like the first girl to wrestle in 5th grade. So I feel like I made like girls wrestling cool before girls wrestling became like cool.
That's
like
what
it
I've heard
is
about
now.
you.
Yeah, thanks.
Local celebrity.
Yeah.
God, I don't know about that. Dunk tank coming up. But the airport is really, they are diversified. And my boss has described it as, right, you don't want all your eggs in one basket, just like if you're looking at your financial portfolio. And so we've done such a great job. We have our industrial park. We have couple like 200 businesses out in our industrial park. So those are all buildings that were there from the Air Force days, or they've now built them. We own all those buildings. And so that's just, that's leasing to people and even new tenants. So like Timpty Trailers out of David City just put a $20 million building on our property out there, and they're already potentially out of space and going to be expanding more. And they put another, I think, 20 million in, equipment inside their building. So, I mean, that's bringing really well-paying jobs into Lincoln. So right there, think about the economic benefit of just having one tenant getting added to our industrial park. And we're hoping to add more. So the industrial park it's probably 70% of our revenue. And those tenants have been great, right? They stuck with us again through the pandemic. There's tons of green space out there, plenty of opportunity for companies to come in and build. We actually lease a bunch of it to farmers. People do hay leases out there. We have, crops out there. And so that is a huge part of our strategic plan, is figuring out how to take this great asset at the airport and continue to grow it, because that's profit. So we have that. And then obviously we have the military component with our Army and Air National Guard. And we have a great relationship with them. And I think they continue to figure out ways to make themselves unique when they're looking at hopefully upgrading their aircraft. And then lastly, commercial aviation. So if I had a crystal ball, of course, my goal would be to get 2 new airlines into Lincoln. I think getting a legacy carrier to compete with United to keep costs fair and to get people to other parts of the country would be ideal. And then I would love to get a ULCC in here, that ultra low cost carrier that I mentioned, so we can get more families and young professionals and just more people in general to fly out of the airport and take advantage of it.
What can we do to help that? What can Lincoln people do?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. I get it asked all the time.
Stop going to Omaha.
Well, that's true.
Besides that.
Yeah, that's true. So there's a couple things. One, I think you're right, is trying to have people at least check Lincoln first. You'll be surprised. I think somebody in here said, my threshold's maybe $150 or $200. And I totally get that. I have 2 little boys. So we do fly as a family a couple times a year. I do understand when you're paying for 4 tickets, a $200 difference, that's huge. I totally understand that. But you'd be surprised, when you start looking at tickets, a lot of the times we are pretty competitive with Omaha. And especially when you start considering parking and drive time and things like that, it actually ends up being close to a wash. Or again, if you're somebody that does, appreciate convenience, we usually win out in that. So keep flying Lincoln, check the flights first just to make sure, we are staying within that threshold that you've set for yourself. And I think overall just being supportive, like you said, so many people are supportive of the Lincoln Airport. But what does that mean? What does that mean to actually be supportive? And I think that's back to that loyalty factor of, one, don't talk bad about us, right? Like get engaged, figure out what's going on and educate yourself before you just go, say what you think you're going to say, because those things do matter. Even, it sounds silly, even coming out to our outdoor movies and coming to those events and just engaging with us helps. But that's the thing. When we had United Airlines in here last week, they said, we have not seen very many communities that have been this pro air service and this pro Lincoln Airport. Not every community do you go into do you feel that welcoming feel.
We should have just had a bunch of people there, like in the runway,
and, like
when they like the Huskers come back from winning the national championship. Crowds of people just for them. They would just be okay.
I'd pay for that.
Exactly.
If I come back and there's everyone holding signs saying my name.
We love you. Yes. I am very confident that we will have a win here soon. I don't want to put a timeline on it because I feel like that's tough to do. I don't control airlines. I don't control budgets. I don't control tariffs and global pandemics and all the other things that happen that are out of my control. But what is in my control, I am confident that we will have a win here soon, and hopefully you'll have me back so I can talk about it. And when I hopefully get to share that win with the community, showing up and using the service, because it's one thing to get it, it's another thing to keep it. And that's the thing that, I've kind of learned through my years of being in marketing and customer service is, that acquisition and that retention, right? Like what's easier? And that retention piece is what's hard, is once you actually get that service, how do you make sure they stay here? Because one, it is our job to make sure that airline is profitable, because as soon as they're not, that's what happens. They will leave your community, and they don't want to. The airline doesn't want to pull out of your community. Sometimes it's out of their control as well, but they don't want that bad taste by all those people. Right? It looks bad on them if they leave your community, but they also want to know that we're invested. And that's what's hard, is people are like, well, you paid X amount of dollars for Redway, or, so-and-so had $1 million to come into a community. That's called a minimum revenue guarantee. And I'm like, yeah, but think about it, right? If you're a new business and you're coming into the Lincoln community, right? There's incentives. There's incentive packages out there through the Partnership of Economic Development, right? Sometimes maybe it's a better rate on electricity. Maybe it's cheaper land. Maybe it's this, maybe it's that, maybe it's some grants. But right, we incentivize businesses to move here. An airline is no different. It costs them roughly about $4 million to go into a new community to start up costs. $4 million. So if you really think about that, and Redway was only $3 million, well, shoot, we're in the hole before we even start. Yeah. And so when a new airline comes into your community and they say, hey, this is what roughly we think it's going to cost to move into Lincoln, they want to know that the community is also invested in that. And so when we come up with maybe $1 million through grants or, a minimum revenue guarantee, it's not because we're paying that airline, it's to help offset their cost. And they also want to know that the community is behind them, right? Like if a community shows up and has $1 million invested in that business, it's way more likely to succeed, right? Because then you have a skin in the game, right? You're like, hey, I help pay for this. I want to make sure that I get that flight to Vegas that you want. I make sure I go to Phoenix. I make sure I go take my kids to Orlando, or whatever it is. You have more skin in the game, right? It's just like that donation to your Husker Athletics, right? So you can keep those tickets, right? There's more skin in the game. It's super similar. I talk about attracting an airline just like an NIL deal. Right? Like it is very similar. It's a pay to play system. You want that best quarterback, you better show up with some money and some really impressive facilities and a heck of a pitch to get them here. And that's what I'm trying to do for the airport. I got to show up with money. I have a great facility now. So I already got one of the two things. And now I have to show them that if they come here, not only will we make them profitable, they're going to be able to stay for a long time because they don't want to have to move that aircraft around. That's expensive to do.
I'm sold. Let's start it there. Joe, you in?
Can you do a GoFundMe
let's do it.
for
We will
Rachel's
start one,
Rachel's air service at the Lincoln Airport? That'd be great, guys.
We should do a dunk tank.
Like,
Let's do that with Rachel.
there are plenty
Or
of
Joe.
people that would pay a lot of money to dunk me in a tank, I'm sure.
Where you're going to find out soon.
Yeah.
So, here in town of this great city of Lincoln, when you're not doing strategic air planning, what do you like to do recreationally for fun?
Sure.
Restaurants?
So, like side note, I do not live in Lincoln. I know.
What is she even
Who
doing
let her
here?
on?
What
Cut
the heck?
Cut it.
I know. You can get mad. I am a resident, though, of Lancaster County, so don't worry. I actually live in the small town of Bennett, so I'm not sure where everybody knows where Bennett is. Little small town outside of Lincoln. It's actually where I grew up, so we built a house on my family's farm ground. Farm kid through and through, but definitely love Lincoln. I did undergrad and grad school at the university, so I'm a Husker through and through. I have a ton of fan favorites, but I love golf. Like golf has become like a huge thing for me. I actually met my husband at a golf course, I don't know, 13, 14 years ago now.
Oh, tell us the meet cute story.
Right? Okay, fine. So I was a beer cart girl at Highmark Golf Course, and
It's gone. It'll work.
I am giving every golfer hope out there, right?
Just be flirty with the beer cart girl. It'll pay off.
Sometimes. I worked at Highmark Golf Course. That was my weekend job, right? Like that's how you get through college is off at tips and working at golf courses. So I did that, and I think it's called Newmark now. I don't think it's Highmark anymore, but it's Newmark, which funny, I never golfed when I was out there because I thought golf was kind of stupid. I'd see guys chuck their clubs into the water, right? Like,
Sorry about that.
roll golf carts. I was like, this is like the dumbest game. And but anyways, my husband worked at the pro shop, so that's how we met.
Okay. So it wasn't a golfer.
Okay.
Yeah.
There's a bit of an asterisk by that.
Yeah. I mean, he kind of was. We didn't really know each other, but I had come back from an internship in Kansas City, and was getting back into my senior year of college. And
More of a coworker than a golfer.
correct. Yeah. So that's where we met. So that's how we, have fun. We golfed this weekend, and I was lucky enough to golf yesterday this week in the chamber golf tournament. So love golfing. But I have kids. I have a 9-year-old and a 6-year-old, 2 boys, and they keep me crazy busy. I coach T-ball, 10U baseball. I'm assistant soccer coach right now. My little one did wrestling this year, flag football. I mean, you name it.
Wow.
And then we live on a farm. And so we have pigs and cattle and chickens. And so my 9-year-old, he's like Mr. Farmer. He's got his own garden. He planted watermelon and carrots and corn, and then he's got his own chickens, and so he sells his eggs. He's like Mr. Entrepreneur. And then my little one's like my little sports kid. He just wants to do everything. And so I feel like anything that I can do recreationally with them. I love going to the children's zoo with them, love going to like Holmes Lake, Pioneers Park, like anything like outdoors that we can do. And even in the winter, I mean, we'll come over to Breslow and we'll go ice skating. Of course, my outdoor movies tend to be a favorite of theirs. They like to get on the microphone and talk. So if you ever want to do a podcast with like super hilarious kids, you can invite my kids to come on your
Kristen Stewart
podcast.
could say the darndest thing.
Yeah, he does. Except for he's starting to cuss. And so, yeah, we had to have a little discussion about language. He might be spending a little too much time at the family shop and learning some words that he's not supposed to learn. But yeah, and then I love like exploring new restaurants, going to different places to drink. One of my favorites is like the Barred Owl at Scarlet Hotel. I love going on the rooftop and, you know, just having a good cocktail. Love going to football games. I'm a big basketball person. Honestly, all sports. I love going to Husker baseball, Salt Dogs games. I mean, I don't know. There's not a lot I don't like to do.
I noticed. Yeah, that's great though.
I have ADD, so I can't. If I'm bored, there's a problem.
Got it. Well, thank you so much for coming on. That was good. Very good.
Good. I'm glad I got to hang out with you guys.
And we'll do it again after you get that, no timeline. But
Yeah, no timeline, but
big dog.
yeah. When you see a phone call from me, you'll know.
Got it.
Nice.
All right. Thanks, everybody.